When I hired 30 tutors in one go, that meant that my team grew to a team of 50 tutors, and this was at the start of 2017. Now, did things go according to plan? No, of course they didn't. That year, business did not scale as expected. I lost a lot of tutors that year, and I remember so distinctly crying on that Valentine's Day, which had happened just a few weeks after I had hired my tutors. You can actually see the post I made about Josh, about being grateful to Josh for supporting me on that Valentine's Day when I was feeling really, really low. If you scroll all the way back down my Instagram back to 2017. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this story with you is because I know that so many of you want to build a team as well. I know that some of you have tried, but you realize that it's actually much harder than you think. Tutors are leaving, they don't show up to sessions, they're stealing your students. And so that leaves us feeling exasperated. It makes us feel traumatized to even go out there and hire tutors again. And so what these experiences tell you is that you're the only person who can operate this business. You're the only person that is trustworthy enough. But the problem with this is that you stay stuck as a solo tutor if you believe these stories. And so I want to share with you the story of my journey of how I grew from 0 tutors to 50 tutors and then finally back down to 35 tutors, the different problems I experienced throughout this journey, but also the lessons that I have taken away that I now have used to teach my own Tutor Boss clients as well, to help them really scale their businesses sustainably. And I hope that by the end of this video, it inspires you to realize that probably a lot of the experiences you've had, a lot of the struggles you've had with hiring tutors, you're definitely not alone. I've probably been there too. There are other tutors out there who've been there too, and that there are ways for you to overcome them. So let's jump into my story of how I grew my tutoring team. So Lisa's Study Guides was absolutely killing it. I don't think I really appreciated how well the business was growing when I was at that age. We'd essentially grown from 0 to 5 tutors within about 6 months or so, to 10 tutors by the end of that year, and then 20 tutors by the end of my second year doing tutoring full time. Now, my issue was that my tutors actually just kept getting booked out. I was feeling so on top of the world, growing my business as a girl boss, and I'd quit pharmacy and my ego was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger because I was like, wow, look at all these leads that are coming through, and I need to hire so many tutors, and we're scaling monetary wise, profit wise, and this looks great. But the struggle was that because my tutors kept getting booked out, that was actually the bottleneck of the business, the number of tutors I had on the team. Because we kept getting booked out, I kept having to say no to people, which then meant that we couldn't actually onboard students, which then meant we couldn't have lessons, which then meant we couldn't actually have income from those lost opportunities. And so because I was having these issues for the first couple of years, by the time we rolled into our 3rd school year, I had 20 tutors on my team. And I figured, you know what? I'm not going to keep having my tutors being the bottleneck of my business because I know we get leads. And so I figured to myself, you know what? I'm going to hire an additional 30 tutors over these next couple of months so that I'm ready for the new school year. So that as we get the flood of inquiries coming through, I'm going to be ready. And as we go throughout the year, I will have tutors ready at the helm to help any students who want to sign up to tutoring with us. So based on my projections, based on how we were tracking and how many students we'd lost, I knew that we needed to have 50 tutors on the tutoring team. Now, the reason why I wanted to hire these tutors at the start of the tutoring year is because that's when a lot of tutors get snatched up by all of the different tutoring companies. So all the tutoring companies who are probably competing against you are going out there trying to hire tutors for the new school year. So I didn't really want to lose out on the opportunity, but also I knew that if I wasn't able to get tutors at the start of the school year, those tutors would probably then go on to find other jobs, not just tutoring, but maybe retail jobs, or they would commit to other things in their lives, which would then mean that if later I put out job ads and I invited people to come to work for us, the number of people who would apply would actually be much lower. So that was that. That was my decision making. It was strategic, or at least for that point in time, it was strategic for me. And I think the great thing that came out of that was because I hired so many tutors in one go, we absolutely nailed the hiring process. So really identifying our dream tutor, writing up the job description, and then doing so many interviews. I swear that particular year we did like close to 100 interviews just within that couple of months. I feel like that was really, really good practice to find the right tutors for the business. And if you don't know already, I recently actually conducted a 3-day live workshop, and I basically took my tutor bosses through the A to Z of hiring, from your dream client, identifying who that is, writing that up so that you can then apply that to your job description to attract that dream tutor, knowing exactly what you need to say. For example, are you looking for an enthusiastic tutor? Are you looking for a bubbly tutor? Are you looking for someone who's committed? Are you looking for someone who's motivated? What particular credentials are you looking for? All of that is written down in your job description to be really clear to attract that right person to your interview. And then within the interview, knowing what soft skills to test for, knowing how to test for their teaching abilities, and knowing how to test for their cultural fit abilities, so that by the time you onboard them, you're very confident that you've got a dream tutor on your dream tutoring teams. It's called Hire Your Tutoring Dream Team. It's got the recordings from the 3 days of the workshops, including all the resources that I provided my tutor bosses, including the exact interview questions I asked these 100 tutors that I interviewed, the job description that I released. If you're interested in purchasing that, I will link it up in the cards and in the description box below for you. So I felt on top of the world after I had hired all these tutors for my team. At that point in time, I had the most number of tutors I've ever had. But then the problems came. My mistake in making this decision of hiring so many tutors at once is that I didn't cater for how soon we would get those leads, how fast we would get those leads. I knew that given enough time throughout the year, all of the 50 tutors would be fully booked out. I knew that because based on historical data, and if we kept going alongside the historical data in the future, that we would get enough leads so that the tutors would be fully booked out, which is why I chose to have 50 tutors. But what I didn't realize is that because we weren't getting the leads fast enough, it meant that I had some tutors who were starting to get fully booked out, and then I'd have some tutors with a few students, and then I'd had a lot of tutors who had no students at all. Now, you might ask, why didn't you just sort of give each one of the tutors like one student each and sort of just like plot along and then slowly fill them up? I could have done that, but I feel like what aligned with me most at that point in time was to honor my connection with my older tutors. I wanted to show loyalty to my older tutors and showcase to them that I valued them on the team. And just because we had other people, new tutors on the team, didn't mean that that would affect them negatively or affect the old tutors negatively. And so what I tried to do is, I suppose if I separate it into old tutors versus new tutors, I tried to fill up my old tutors first before I filled up my new tutors. Now, that was okay. It actually worked quite well for the old tutors. They didn't see any difference between how things were the year before versus how things were this year. But I think what that meant for my new tutors is that because I had promised them that I would be getting them students, I did not meet their expectations, and I feel like that left not a great first impression for their experience at Lisa's Study Guides. So even though at the start of the year, I knew that I wanted to try to hire as many tutors as possible because I'd have a bigger pool of people before they got committed to other businesses or other commitments, I think upon reflection, and this is what we ended up doing later on, is we only hired a certain amount at the start of the school year, and then we continued to hire people throughout the school year, because that way we could make sure that we serviced our old tutors and gave them students, but as new leads came through, we would hire new tutors to service those students. And this ties into problem number 2. Because I didn't give these tutors students straight away, what I didn't realize is that the tutor motivation, their excitement for working at my company really was significantly impacted in a negative way. So student motivation just dropped, and their connection with the company, their loyalty to the company also dropped. And I think that's because I promised them the world. I told them that they would get X number of students. I'd be able to help them get fully booked out because we got so many leads all the time. We always had students. But when that actually didn't come to fruition, of course, that means that I have created dissonance. I haven't matched up to the expectation that I had actually set. And so the pattern that I found was for those tutors that I'd signed on that year that I wasn't able to give students to straight away, it was that group that had a massive exodus from Lisa study guides that particular year. Some of them were throughout the year, but majority of them left at the end of that school year. I contrast that with the tutors that had signed on beforehand, who I had slowly hired, was able to give them students straight away as soon as they started. Those students actually stuck with me for way longer. And so that leads me into problem number 3, is that I didn't set the right expectations. So inside the interview, I was extremely excited. Fair enough, I was excited to grow my team, but I had made the mistake of saying that I'd be able to give them a student straight away, that would get them fully booked out, when in a lot of cases, I would say for majority of those 30 tutors I hired, I wasn't able to give them a student straight away, and it took months to actually get them filled up. And so I think had I actually set more realistic expectations, I probably could have better controlled that exodus of tutors and actually had the tutors be more loyal because I had set the right expectations. So I think I should have said something along the lines of, hey, this is where the business is at the moment. We've seen this type of growth so far. We have 20 tutors on the team, and up until this date, when the tutors have started, they've been able to sign on students straight away. We've been able to get all our tutors fully booked out. This year, I'm doing things a little bit differently. I am hiring 30 new tutors for the team, which is a lot in one go, but I know that based on our historical data that we will be able to fill up your capacity in terms of how many students you'd want. What I can't say, however, is how quickly you're going to get those students. So you might get a student within a week, but it might be about a month or even a couple of months before you get students. So I'm just going to pause right there. As you can see, I'm very transparent. I think that's the leadership style that I like to have in my business, because I think that if you can be transparent with what's going on and showcase to your team members that you don't even fully know what you're doing and that you're figuring it as you go, taking them along that journey is going to help them feel so much more connected to you and your company and you as a person, because you're not this perfect person. You're a human being who's just trying to learn as you go. The other thing I would say here is I prefer not to have tutors sign on in my business if they have to wait a couple of months in order to get their first student. I think that a tutor has the highest motivation when they first start out in your business, so you want to capitalize off that. And so if you're making them wait around for 2 months, I mean, in that 2 months, they could have gone to another tutoring company to do tutoring for that person, or they could have done something else with their time rather than sort of put time aside for potential work to come through. Personally, I don't think that's how I want to build a business. I don't want to build a business where I'm sort of almost hoarding the tutors and going, look, I'm going to give you work, because they will chase up with you and they'll be like, okay, so when's my next student coming through? When's my first student coming through? And that puts a lot of pressure on you as well as a tutor. So that's why, going back to what I was saying before, I actually prefer to hire a certain number of tutors, maybe a little bit more than I need, but not so much more like what I did in this scenario where I hired 30 tutors in one go, where it'd be months until some of them would actually get students. Now, the next problem that was born from all of this is that I didn't communicate with my tutors. I think communication is so important as a leader because it helps everyone understand what's happening. And when you have knowledge of what's happening, you feel in control of the situation. But if your boss is not telling you what's going on, which I'm sure many of you have probably had a terrible boss at some point, or someone who doesn't necessarily communicate as well as they could, then you also just feel uncertain about your future. And I feel like I was that leader at that point in time. Actually, I don't know if I would call myself a leader at that point in time because I was literally just learning. I didn't feel like a leader. I had no idea what I was doing. And because I didn't communicate with them what was happening, so with the tutors who just signed on board, literally for a few of them, I didn't talk to them for months. I didn't tell them that I was scrambling to get as many students as I could. I was trying to fill up my old tutors before I started giving them tutors. I just feel like had I communicated, it would have actually done a lot in helping people feel like they were a part of a team. And so because of these problems, I lost a lot of tutors by the end of 2017. I think it was something along the lines of, I can't remember now because it's so long ago, but like somewhere between probably 10 to 20 of those tutors. So by the end of 2017, I was left with probably around 30, 35 tutors. Now, throughout this experience, I did learn a lot. And so I want to share with you some of the lessons that I took with me that I then started to implement in my business in the years after, which made my business a lot stronger. So I am grateful for having made this huge mistake because now at least I can share them with you so that you don't have to make these same mistakes again. My first lesson is hire before you're ready. So the problem you will face is if you're getting enough lead generation, you're getting enough people signing up, you need to deal with your tutors getting booked out. So when you start to notice that you're maybe about 80% capacity with all of your tutors, that's when I would say get out there and start looking for your next tutor. As you get better and better at this, you will know how much that specific number will be for you. Is it 80%? Is it 90%? Is it 70%? Find what feels right for your business. But to begin with, I would say 80% because that's what worked for me and my business. So I didn't wait until my tutors were fully booked out, but I knew that once I only had a couple more spots left for students, that's when I needed to give myself about a 2-week grace period to then go and find a tutor so that within those 2 weeks, my old tutors would probably get fully booked out and then I had a new tutor to then take on board the new students. I would not overhire like I did and have 30 additional tutors on your team that are just sitting around, because this leads to lesson 2. You want to make sure that you capitalize off that tutor excitement when they first sign up with you. So tutor motivation is at its peak. Anybody who starts a new job, you're really excited, or hopefully you're really excited, but that's probably when you're feeling most motivated. And so we want to be able to give those tutors students straight away or as soon as possible because they've signed up to work with you, they know they're doing tutoring. So if you can give them students to tutor, then everybody feels good. Everyone feels excited. You're giving them work, they're getting paid, you're making money. Great, everyone wins. Now, if you aren't able to give them a student straight away, I've also learned that you can make the most of that motivated period by giving your tutors other options of how else they can work with your company. So for example, if you know that you need to have resources created for lessons in your company, then maybe you ask these tutors to get involved with resource creation. That way it keeps them busy. It makes them feel like they're involved and connected with the business, and that means that you keep their motivation high until you're able to sign them their first student. The third lesson I learned is to set realistic expectations with your tutors. So I would tell them in the interview process and also on the onboarding process, how long will it take for you to actually assign them a student? If you don't have definite answers, and it can be hard to have finite answers, tell them roughly the time frame that it may take for you to assign them a student. And the most important thing here is to constantly update them on those expectations. So let's say if you say to your tutor, usually when you sign up with the company, it takes about 2 weeks for you to get your first student. If you're headed towards the end of those 2 weeks and they're not getting a student, then I would make sure you reach out to them before the end of those 2 weeks to just touch base. Give them a call, send them an email. I personally prefer calls because I think it's nicer to actually speak to somebody. When you sort of communicate through email, you're getting a less personalized version of you. And I'm all about building connections with my tutors and my team. That is my leadership style. And so you want to communicate with them. Hey, I know I mentioned previously that it would take up to about 2 weeks for you to get your first student. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to make that 2-week period. It's looking a little bit quiet at the moment. So I'm not quite sure when you're going to get your next student. I'm hoping that will happen over the next couple of weeks, but let me keep you updated. How are you feeling? What do you think? And actually just get them involved in the conversation as well, because that will help you build rapport with your tutor, build that loyalty, build that trust, build that connection. The other thing I wanted to add here, and I am absolutely guilty of this, and this is actually only something I've come to terms with more recently, probably over the past few months, and I've been doing this for the past 10 years or so, but that it's okay for things to change in business. And even if you said, hey, you're going to get a student in 2 weeks, if you can't make that, I know you're going to feel terrible. I know I feel terrible. And I feel like I've failed as a boss. I feel like I have misled people. I feel that I will be disappointing people. And so just know that it's okay for things in business to not work out the way that you think. And your people aren't going to hold you to that if you just communicate with them and that you apologize. Like, I'm sorry, I thought we would be able to get you a student by now. I'm really working on this. Let me keep you updated. Some small words like that really make a big difference when it comes to building a team. And so this leads into my lesson 4, but that's to build a team culture. High touch point is important. So if you want your tutors to feel loyal to you, if you want your tutors to feel connected to your company's mission and values, you want to make sure that you help them feel like they acknowledge that they're valued and that they are a crucial part of the business. And so what does having high touch points really mean? I think it's different company to company, but with my business, because we were very much asynchronous, we're very much remote, we didn't have for the longest time a tutoring center. And so my tutors would just go off on their own to people's houses, to local libraries. And so I didn't see my tutors day to day. Like, everyone just went about with their own business. What I found really helped with our team culture was making sure that I created space and opportunity for tutors to come together and for us to build a community. Now, you can build your tutoring community in whichever way feels good to you. For me, it was a variation of things. In my business, I wanted to make sure that we had one-on-one contact with the tutor. So every 6 months, we would actually jump into a call with them and just sit down and touch base and just see what was going on with them, their lives, and also their tutoring and how we could support them. We also made sure that at the end of each term, we had get-togethers that were more fun. So we would have board game nights, we would have escape room nights, we would have dinner out, we would have bar nights. Although my tutors, they were just so lovely. Most of them didn't even drink. I'm really surprised about that because most of them were university students, but yeah, they just did it. And so because I learned that over time, I realized, okay, well, maybe instead of like going to cocktail bars, like let's do other fun stuff like rock climbing or bowling. Beyond that, I also made sure to have training sessions with my tutors as well. So really implement what you feel would be great to support your team. And I think that you don't have to have the answer. If you're sort of scratching your head trying to figure out, I don't know how to build a team culture, you don't need to know. Ask your tutors what they want. Ask the people that you're doing this for what would be most helpful for them, what would make them feel most connected. That's such an easy hack in business. We don't need to have all the answers. It's usually our clients, our people, the people on our team who have the answers for us. And this leads me to my next lesson, which is probably the biggest lesson of all. But it's realizing how important your soft skills are to be the best leader you can possibly be. I think that when you step from being a solo tutor to being the manager of your business to being the CEO, the skills that are required of you as a leader are very, very different to you being a teacher or a tutor of your business. When you're a leader, you're now dealing with people's emotions. You're dealing with people's motivations. And so what is really important, in my opinion, for you to be a great leader is for you to really work on your communication skills. If you're somebody who feels like you're a people pleaser, so you don't like facing confrontation, you don't like having difficult conversations, I have to tell you, I used to be the same, but I have learned over time how important it is to not avoid those conversations, because when you avoid difficult conversations, it just makes things worse. So because I avoided talking to my tutors because I was like, oh gosh, I have not given them a single student yet. I feel so bad for this. I'm just like gonna, kind of ignore it and just pretend it didn't happen. And when I finally get a student for them, that's when I'll reach out to them. But because of that lapse in communication in between that time when they started to when they finally got a student, it really, I could see, like, demoralized them. And it led to a team that just didn't feel cohesive. It didn't feel like people really wanted to be there. And so one of my all-time favorite books that I highly recommend you read is Crucial Conversations. I listened to it first through audiobook and it was amazing. So if you like listening to a book rather than reading it, it works really well as an audiobook. But because I loved it so much, I actually went out and purchased it. And Crucial Conversations literally changed my ability to lead. And I feel so much more confident as a leader now because I know whenever I need to communicate anything challenging, anything difficult, I actually have the tools to go out there and do it and no longer feel nervous, well, sometimes I feel nervous, to be honest, but I think that's very normal. Obviously, when you go into difficult conversations, you don't want to let the other person down. You care, right? It's not a bad thing. But I think it's that I don't avoid those conversations anymore. I'm getting more and more comfortable having these challenging conversations. I'm also a really big believer of over-communicating rather than under-communicating. So ever since I sold Lisa Study Guides, I now work as a tutor boss. So I have my own coaching business where I help tutors like yourselves grow your own tutoring businesses. And in my current business, I have a team of four amazing people, my ideal fits, they're my dream people to work with. And I think the reason why we're so successful at the moment as a team is because we're always keeping each other in the loop. Even if I said something last week, I will repeat it again this week just to make sure that people have received what I've said, that they don't forget. So one thing I always say is over communicate, don't under communicate. The other soft skill that I think is really important is your emotional intelligence as a leader. When you're working with a team of people, you really need to understand them emotionally, because once you understand that, that's when you can really speak to them and to understand how to motivate them, to understand where they're at and where they actually want to go in the future, or to even understand, hey, maybe this is actually no longer the right fit for us anymore. Maybe you shouldn't be working at this company anymore. So a couple of things that have really helped me with improving my emotional intelligence, I really leaned on understanding the Myers-Briggs. Basically, the Myers-Briggs is this personality test, and people have varied opinions on it. People like it, people don't like it because they don't like how when you take the test, it can pigeonhole people into a specific personality, which, yes, we get it. When it comes to humans, we don't just fall specifically into a box. But I think when I first started out in business, I didn't really understand people's motivations. I didn't really understand the way other people saw the world. I only saw how I saw the world. And so by leaning on the Myers-Briggs and starting to do the test for myself, but also getting my friends to do it, getting my team members to do it, it was a really fun way to actually learn more about those people, and then to then ask them, hey, this personality test says that you really like order and you really like having control. Is that the case? And then you learn out more about that person. They say, yeah, like I love having a sense of control over my work. Like that gives me a lot of clarity. And then so when you know that, that, you're like, amazing. Well, what can I do to make sure that they feel as controlled as possible in their work so they're feeling really fulfilled and really aligned with their work? On the flip side, if you've got somebody who is really extroverted, maybe you pair them with a student who's also really extroverted. If you have someone who's more introverted, maybe you pair them with someone who's a bit more introverted so that they can gel with each other a little bit more. I'm just using a really basic example, by the way, so you don't have to do this. I'm not saying that only extroverted people only get along with extroverted people. That's not the case. It's more just to showcase that seeing all these different types of personalities really helped me get outside my head and helped me get into the shoes of other people so that I could understand them better. And when I understood them better, that helped me be a better leader for them. And then the last thing I will say here is that being a leader, it takes practice. To become the leader you want to be, you might not know who that is right now. And I think when I started out being a leader, I was 25 years old. I wasn't even a leader of myself, really. And so I had no idea like where I wanted to go with this business, who I wanted to be, what kind of leader I wanted to be. And so just know that it's okay for you to stumble through and learn things as you go. And as you practice, you will get better at these things. And a lot of these soft skills that you learn as a leader, they're skills that you take for life, and they're skills that you continue to build for life. We never stop improving, right? We never stop self-actualizing. So I hope that by sharing this story with you, I can just show you, as somebody who has been a leader now for close to 10 years, that it's actually only in my most recent years, like past year or so, that I'm starting to feel really confident with what I'm doing. And that's been going through lots of hurdles, lots of mistakes. If you want to shortcut through a lot of those mistakes, and don't forget that I've got that 3-day workshop, Hire Your Tutoring Dream Team, that you can go and also sign up to if you want to. But otherwise, I hope that this video has given you some insight into how you can grow your tutoring team. If you have enjoyed this video and you found value in it, then I would really love for you to comment the word tutors, just so that I know you watched all the way until the end of this video. I really appreciate you. If you want to learn more about how to build a business so that tutors would love to work for you, then I have a video over here that I did recently that covers even more detail of how I built my tutoring team so that some of my tutors stuck with me for like 7-8 years. And then next week, if you're interested, I'm going to be releasing a video about how I 2x my business profits with just one change in the business. So small tweaks can make a really big difference. So if you're not subscribed to this channel already, then please go ahead and do so that you get the notification when I drop that video. All right, tutor bosses, I will catch you all next time. Bye.